The distress signal had been calling for help for 3 days. It came from a place far away from any planet, from a station that floated alone in the darkness of space. The signal was weak and broken, like a whisper asking someone to please listen. Captain Yuna sat in her chair on the bridge of her ship, the Endless Dawn. She was a small woman with kind eyes and dark hair that she kept tied back. She had been traveling through space for 15 years, and she had seen many strange things. But something about this signal made her feel uneasy. "What do we know about this station?" she asked. Her second officer was named Thesa. She was a Valoran, a species that looked like tall birds with beautiful feathers and sharp eyes. Thesa looked at her screens and made a worried sound. "The station is called Kappa 7, Thesa said. "It was built by the Kolvathi. They used it for research, but it has been empty for many years now." Yuna felt her heart grow cold when she heard that name. The Kolvathi. Everyone in the galaxy knew about them. They were hunters, predators. They stood 7 feet tall and had scales like armor. Their claws could cut through metal. Their teeth were made for killing. For hundreds of years, they had been the monsters that parents warned their children about. But then the plague came. A terrible sickness that spread through the Kolvathi like fire through dry grass. Millions died. Their great empire fell apart. The survivors ran away to hide in the dark corners of the galaxy. Now, the Kolvathi were almost gone. Their name was spoken only in whispers, like a ghost story. Why would anyone be sending a distress signal from a Kolvathi station? Yuna asked. Thesa's feathers moved in a way that showed she was nervous. "I am detecting life signs, Captain. But they are strange. They are small. And there are 5 of them, all in one place." "Small?" Yuna leaned forward. "How small?" "Like children." The bridge became very quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. Kolvathi children, cubs, alone on a dying station. Yuna had heard stories about Kolvathi cubs. They said the cubs were just as dangerous as the adults. They said the cubs were born with the instinct to hunt and kill. They said that even a small cub could tear apart a grown man if it wanted to. But Yuna also knew something else. She knew that cubs, no matter what species they were still just children. And children should not be left alone in the dark to die. "How long until the station loses all power?" she asked. Thesa checked her readings. 12 hours. Maybe less. The life support systems are failing. When they stop, the air will become poison. The temperature will drop below freezing. And how long until a containment team can arrive? 3 days at the fastest. 3 days. But the cubs only had 12 hours. Yuna stood up from her chair. "I am going to the station." Everyone on the bridge looked at her like she was crazy. Thesa stepped toward her, her feathers standing up in alarm. "Captain, you cannot be serious. Those are Kolvathi cubs. They are dangerous. Even young ones have killed before. The protocol says we must wait for a specialized team with proper equipment and weapons. The protocol will let those children die," Yuna said simply. She walked toward the door. "I will not. But Captain..." "Thesa." Yuna stopped and looked back at her officer. Her voice was calm but firm. "I have a daughter back on Earth. She is 9 years old. When I look at those life signs, I do not see monsters. I see children who are scared and alone and running out of time. I cannot leave them." Thesa was quiet for a moment. Then she lowered her head. "What do you need?" "Prepare a shuttle. Pack emergency supplies. Food, water, medical equipment, thermal blankets." "And Thesa?" Yuna paused at the door. "Do not call the containment team." "Not yet." The shuttle ride to the station took 20 minutes. Yuna spent the time checking her equipment and trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. She had no weapons. She had made that choice on purpose. If she walked in there with a gun, the cubs would see her as a threat. And threatened predators attacked. No, she would go in with open hands and hope that was enough. The station was old and broken. Parts of it were dark because the lights had failed. Parts of it were sealed off because the hull had cracked and let in the cold vacuum of space. Una docked her shuttle at the only working airlock and stepped inside. The smell hit her first. The air was thin and stale, like breathing inside an old closet. The recycling systems were dying. The station smelled like rust and dust and something else underneath. Something animal. She walked slowly through the corridors. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. She could hear the station groaning around her, the sound of old metal getting tired. She could hear the whisper of failing machines. And somewhere ahead, she could hear something else. Breathing. Small, quick breaths. More than one. Una followed the sound. She walked past old laboratories with broken equipment. She walked past rooms filled with dust and forgotten things. She walked past a window that showed her the stars outside, cold and distant and uncaring. Finally, she came to a door. It was the door to what looked like a medical bay. And behind that door, she could hear them clearly now. Small growls, whimpers, the sounds of frightened children trying to be brave. Una took a deep breath. She thought about her daughter back home. She thought about how scared her daughter got during thunderstorms, how she would crawl into bed with Una and hold on tight until the storm passed. These cubs had been in a storm for 6 months, and no one had come to hold them. She opened the door. The medical bay was a mess. Equipment had been pushed aside to make space in the center of the room. Old blankets and torn insulation had been piled together to make a nest. And in that nest, huddled together for warmth, were 5 Corvathi cubs. They were smaller than Una had expected. The biggest one was about the size of a human child of 8 years. The smallest was barely larger than a cat. Their scales were not yet hard like adult Corvathi scales. They still looked soft, almost delicate. Their colors ranged from dark green to pale gray, except for the oldest one, who had beautiful blue markings along her face that looked like flowers. When they saw Una, they all reacted at once. The oldest female stood up and spread her arms wide, her claws extended. She opened her mouth and growled. It was a terrible sound, deep and rumbling, the kind of sound that was meant to make other creatures run away in fear. The other cubs copied her. Even the tiny one, the smallest, opened its little mouth and let out a high-pitched snarl, showing its baby teeth. They were trying so hard to be scary. They were trying so hard to protect each other. But Una did not run. She did not scream. She did not reach for a weapon. Instead, she did something that no prey species had ever done in the history of Corvathi contact. She smiled. And she knelt down, making herself small and unthreatening. And she looked at these fierce little children with nothing but warmth in her eyes. "Oh," she said softly, "look at you, my poor little ones. You must be so hungry, so tired, so scared." The oldest cub's growl faltered. Confusion filled her eyes. This was not how prey was supposed to act. This was not how anyone was supposed to act. But Una just kept smiling, and slowly, carefully, she held out her hand. "It is okay," she whispered. "I am here now. You are not alone anymore." The oldest cub did not know what to do. For 6 months, she had been the leader. She had been the one who kept her siblings alive. She had taught them how to hunt the small creatures that lived in the station walls. She had shown them how to find water from the broken pipes. She had held them close when the lights went out and the darkness came. She had growled at every strange sound, ready to fight, ready to protect. She had been so brave for so long. But now this strange creature was kneeling in front of her, and it was not afraid. It had soft skin and no claws and no scales. It had dark fur on top of its head and strange round eyes that were filled with something the cub did not understand. Something warm. The cub growled again, but this time the growl was weaker. She was confused. She was tired. And somewhere deep inside her, in a place she had tried to lock away, she was still just a scared little girl who missed her mother. Yuna did not move. She stayed on her knees with her hand extended, palm up, showing that she held nothing. She kept her voice soft and gentle, the way she talked to her own daughter when she had nightmares. "I know you are scared," Yuna said. "I know you have been alone for a very long time. But I am not going to hurt you. I promise." The second oldest cub, a male with darker scales, moved closer to his sister. He was trying to look threatening, but Yuna could see that his legs were shaking. Behind them, the two middle cubs, who looked almost exactly alike, held each other tightly. And the smallest one, the tiny cub with pale gray scales, had stopped snarling. She was staring at Yuna with huge eyes, her head tilted to one side like she was trying to understand something impossible. Yuna reached slowly into her bag. All the cubs tensed, ready to attack. But Yuna just pulled out a small package and opened it. Inside was food. Simple ration bars, nothing special, but they smelled good. She placed one on the floor in front of her and pushed it gently toward the cubs. "Here," she said. "You must be hungry." None of them moved. The oldest cub looked at the food, then back at Yuna. Her eyes were full of distrust. In her short life, she had learned that nothing came for free. There was always danger. There was always a trick. But she was so hungry. They were all so hungry. The smallest cub moved first. She was too young to understand caution the way her older siblings did. She only knew that she was hungry and that this strange creature was offering food. She crawled forward on her little legs, her soft scales making a quiet sound on the floor. "Bomi no." The oldest cub barked in their language, reaching for her sister. But the little one was already at the food. She sniffed it carefully. Then she looked up at Yuna with her big eyes, and Yuna smiled at her. "Go ahead," Yuna said gently. "It is for you." The little cub took a small bite. Then her eyes went wide, and she shoved the rest of the bar into her mouth, eating so fast that she almost choked. Yuna laughed softly and pulled out more food. "Slow down, little one. There is plenty. Here, give some to your brothers and sisters." One by one, the cubs came forward. The oldest was the last to move. She watched Yuna carefully the entire time, looking for any sign of danger, any hint of a trap. But there was nothing. Just this strange, soft creature sitting on the cold floor, handing out food and speaking in a warm voice. Finally, the oldest cub took a ration bar. She did not eat it right away. Instead, she held it and stared at Yuna. "Why?" she asked in broken Galactic Common, the language that most species use to communicate. "Why help?" Yuna looked at her. This cub, who was still so young, had the eyes of someone much older. Eyes that had seen too much pain. Eyes that did not trust easily. "Because you needed help," Yuna said simply. "And I was here." The cub did not seem to understand. In her experience, creatures did not help each other without a reason. Her parents had taught her about the galaxy, about the many species that lived among the stars. They had taught her that most of those species feared the Korvathi, hated them, wanted them dead. So why was this creature, this human, being kind? "You should fear," the cub said. "We are dangerous." Yuna looked at the tiny cub who was now climbing into her lap, purring like a small engine. She looked at the twins who were sharing a ration bar, breaking it carefully in half so they each got the same amount. She looked at the male cub who was eating but still watching his sisters, still ready to protect them. I see 5 children who have been very brave for a very long time, Yuna said. I do not see anything to fear. Something changed in the oldest cub's face. Her hard expression cracked just a little. For a moment, she looked like what she really was. A child. Just a child. Our parents, she whispered. They got sick. They put us here. They said wait. They said someone would come. Her voice broke. No one came. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. She opened her arms slowly, carefully. Someone came now, she said. I am here. I am not going to leave you. The oldest cub stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she moved forward. She was shaking, not from cold, but from something else. From the weight of all the fear and loneliness she had been carrying for so long. She fell against Yuna's chest, and Yuna wrapped her arms around her, holding her tight. The cub made a sound that Yuna had never heard before. It was not a growl or a snarl. It was something softer. Something broken. It was the sound of a child finally letting herself cry. The other cubs gathered around them. The male pressed against Yuna's back, resting his head on her shoulder. The twins curled up on either side, and the little one was already asleep in Yuna's lap, her small claws holding onto Yuna's jacket. They stayed like that for a long time. Yuna held them and rocked them gently, and whispered soft words that they did not fully understand, but that still somehow helped. She told them that they were safe now. She told them that they were not alone anymore. She told them that she was going to take care of them. Outside the medical bay, the station continued to die. The lights flickered and failed in distant corridors. The temperature dropped another degree. The machines groaned and wheezed as they struggled to keep working. But inside that small room, 5 lost children had found something they thought they would never have again. They had found someone who was not afraid of them. They had found someone who looked at their claws and teeth and scales and saw only children who needed love. Hours later, when the cubs were finally asleep in their nest of blankets, Yuna contacted her ship. Thesa, she said quietly, prepare the guest quarters. Make them warm. And get me children's clothes, if we have any. Any size. There was a long pause. Captain, you are bringing them aboard. Yes, the council will be very unhappy. There are laws about this. Protocols. The Korvathi are classified as a dangerous species. Those cubs will need to go to a containment facility for evaluation, and... Thesa, Yuna interrupted. I am not sending these children to a containment facility. They have been through enough. They are coming home with me. Another pause. Longer this time. Captain, are you saying what I think you were saying? Yuna looked at the sleeping cubs. The little one had rolled over in her sleep and was now using Yuna's bag as a pillow. The oldest had one arm wrapped protectively around her siblings, even in her dreams. Yes, Yuna said. I am keeping them. All of them. They are mine now. She could almost hear Thesa shaking her head through the communicator. But her officer's voice was soft when she spoke again. I will prepare the quarters, Captain. And I'll see if we have any toys in storage. Yuna smiled. Thank you, Thesa. She ended the call and looked down at her new family. 5 little monsters, the galaxy would call them. 5 dangerous predators that should be locked away. But Yuna saw something different. She saw 5 children who had been alone in the dark, waiting for someone to save them. And now she was going to give them a home. The journey back to Central Station would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks of travel through the dark spaces between the stars. 3 weeks for Yuna to turn 5 scared wild cubs into something that looked a little more like a family. It was not easy. The first few days were the hardest. The cubs did not know how to live on a ship with other people. They did not know that they could not hunt the small clean robots that moved through the corridors. They did not know that they should not growl at every crew member who walked past their room. They did not know that food would come at regular times, that they did not need to hide scraps in the corners, that no one was going to take anything away from them. The little one, the smallest cub, learned the fastest. She was young enough that she had not yet built the walls of fear and distrust that her older siblings carried. Within 2 days, she was following Yuna everywhere, riding on her shoulders, playing with her hair, making small happy sounds whenever Yuna gave her attention. The twins were next. They were shy and quiet and always together, but they watched everything with curious eyes. When Yuna sat down to read reports, they would creep closer and closer until they were sitting right next to her, looking at the glowing screen with fascination. They had never seen so many words before. Their parents had started teaching them to read, but that had stopped when the sickness came. The male cub was protective and suspicious. He did not trust the other crew members, and he spent most of his time guarding the door to their quarters. But Yuna noticed that he loved building things. When she gave him some spare parts and tools, his eyes lit up in a way she had not seen before. He spent hours putting things together, taking them apart, and putting them back together in new ways. The oldest cub was the hardest to reach. She carried the heaviest weight. For 6 months, she had been mother and father and protector to her siblings. She had made the hard choices. She had gone hungry so the little ones could eat. She had stayed awake through the long nights, watching for danger, never letting herself rest. And now, even though she was safe, she could not let go of that responsibility. She could not trust anyone else to take care of her family. Yuna did not push her. She just stayed close and waited. One night, about a week into the journey, Yuna woke up to find the oldest cub sitting alone in the common room. The cub was staring out the window at the stars, and even from across the room, Yuna could see that she was crying. Yuna walked over and sat down next to her. She did not say anything. She just sat there, quiet and present, offering company without demanding conversation. After a long time, the cub spoke. "I could not save them," she whispered. Her voice was rough from crying. "My parents, I watched them get sick. I watched them get weak. They told me to be strong. They told me to take care of the others. And then they went away, and they did not come back." Yuna felt her heart break for this child, who had been forced to grow up too fast. "You did save them," she said gently. "Your brothers and sisters. You kept them alive for 6 months. That is incredible. That is something that many adults could not do." The cub shook her head. "I was so scared. Every day, I was scared. I tried not to show it because they needed me to be strong. But I was so scared all the time." Yuna put her arm around the cub's shoulders. The cub stiffened at first, but then slowly relaxed into the touch. "Being brave does not mean not being scared," Yuna said. "Being brave means being scared and still doing what needs to be done. You were the bravest person on that station." The cub looked up at her with wet eyes. "You really think so?" "I know so." They sat together for a long time, watching the stars drift by. And something shifted between them. The cub did not become completely open after that night, but she began to trust Yuna a little more. She began to let go, just a little, of the heavy weight she had been carrying. A few days later, Yuna decided it was time for something important. She gathered all 5 cubs in the common room. They sat in a circle, looking at her with curious eyes. Even the oldest, who still preferred to stand at the edge of things, came close to listen. "In my culture," Yuna began, "names are very important. They carry meaning. They tell a story. When a child is born, the parents choose a name that represents their hopes for that child." The cubs listened carefully. Names were important in Korvathi culture too, though they used different sounds and meanings. "Your Korvathi names are beautiful," Yuna continued. But I would like to give you new names as well. Names in my language. Names that will help you in the galaxy, because my language is easier for other species to say." She smiled. "And names that show that you are part of my family now." The little one bounced excitedly. She did not fully understand what was happening, but she could feel that it was something good. Yuna looked at her first. "You are the youngest, but you were also the bravest in your own way. When everyone else was scared, you came to me first. You trusted first. In my language, there is a name that means precious and beautiful. I would like to call you Bomi." The little cub's eyes went wide. "Bomi," she repeated, testing the sound. Then she smiled, showing all her tiny teeth. "Bomi, Bomi." She began running in circles, repeating her new name. The twins giggled at their sister. Yuna turned to them next. "You two are always together. You share everything. You take care of each other. I have never seen siblings so close." She looked at the one with slightly darker scales. "You will be Jiwu, which means wisdom and universe. You watch everything and learn everything." Then she looked at the other twin. "And you will be Minji, which means cleverness and beauty. You figure out how things work, and you always find solutions." The twins looked at each other and then back at Yuna. Slowly, they smiled. "Jiwu and Minji," they said together. "We like these names." Yuna turned to the male cub, the builder, the protector. "You watch over your sisters with such dedication. You are strong and steady like a mountain. You build things with your hands, and someday you will build great things that help many people. I will call you Taiho, which means large and noble." Taiho straightened up, his scales puffing out a little with pride. He nodded seriously. "Taiho, it is a good name." "Thank you." Finally, Yuna looked at the oldest cub, the one who had carried them all, the one who was still learning to let someone else help. "And you," Yuna said softly, "you have blue markings on your scales that look like flowers blooming. But more than that, you have helped your siblings bloom and grow even in the darkest place. You are strong, but you are also gentle. You are a leader, but you are also kind. In my language, Hana means flower, and that is what you are. A flower that grew in darkness and still found a way to be beautiful." Hana stared at her. Her eyes were bright with tears, but this time, they were not tears of sadness. "Hana," she whispered. Then, for the first time since Yuna had met her, she smiled. A real smile, not forced, not fake. A smile of someone who finally believed that maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. "Thank you," Hana said. "Thank you for giving us names. Thank you for giving us a home." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "Thank you for being our mother." Yuna felt tears running down her own face. She opened her arms, and all 5 cubs rushed into them at once. They were a tangle of scales and claws and human limbs, holding on to each other, holding on to her. "My little ones," Yuna murmured into their embrace. "My brave, beautiful little ones." In 3 weeks, they would arrive at Central Station. In 3 weeks, they would have to face a galaxy that feared them. In 3 weeks, everything would become much harder. But for now, in this moment, they were just a family. And that was enough. Central Station was the largest structure in the known galaxy. It floated in the middle of nowhere, far from any star or planet. A massive wheel of metal and light that was home to millions of beings from thousands of different species. It was the heart of the Galactic Council, the place where laws were made, where disputes were settled, where the future of civilization was decided. It was also the place where Yuna's family would be judged. The news had spread fast. Long before the endless dawn arrived, everyone knew that a human captain had rescued 5 Korathi cubs. They knew that she had refused to send them to a containment facility. They knew that she had filed adoption papers. The response was not kind. "She is crazy," people said in the corridors and cafes of Central Station. "The Corvathi are monsters. They cannot be tamed. They cannot be trusted. Those cubs will grow up and they will kill her, just like their ancestors killed millions." Others were even more harsh. "She should be arrested. She is putting everyone at risk. Those cubs should be locked away where they cannot hurt anyone. Better yet, they should be destroyed before they become a threat." A few voices spoke in defense of Yuna, but they were quiet and few. Most people agreed that she had made a terrible mistake and that the council would need to fix it. On the day the Endless Dawn docked at Central Station, the docking bay was filled with armed security forces. Soldiers in heavy armor stood in rows, their weapons ready. Council representatives watched from behind protective barriers. News drones flew overhead, recording everything for billions of viewers across the galaxy. They were expecting monsters. The airlock opened, and Yuna walked out first. She wore simple civilian clothes, not her captain's uniform. She carried no weapons. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders, and her face was calm. She looked at the weapons pointed at her, at the frightened faces of the soldiers, at the cameras recording her every move. Then she turned and held out her hand. Hannah came first. She walked with her head held high, trying to look brave. Her blue scales caught the light, and her claws clicked softly on the metal floor. She looked at the soldiers, and for a moment, her old instincts told her to growl, to show her teeth, to make them back away. But Yuna squeezed her hand gently, and Hana stayed quiet. Taiho came next, walking close behind Hana, his body positioned to protect the younger ones. He did not look at the soldiers. He looked straight ahead, his jaw tight, his eyes hard. Then came the twins, Jiwoo and Minji, holding hands and staying close together. They were trying not to look scared, but their scales had gone pale, which happened when Corvathi were frightened. And finally, riding on Yuna's back with her arms wrapped around Yuna's neck, came little Bomi. She was the only one who did not seem afraid. She was too young to fully understand what was happening. She just knew that her mother was here, and her siblings were here, and as long as they were together, everything would be okay. The docking bay was completely silent. Everyone stared at this strange group. A small human woman and 5 young predators, walking together like a family. Captain Yuna. A voice boomed through the speakers. It was the council speaker, a tall being with gray skin and 6 eyes who stood on a platform above the crowd. "You have violated 17 protocols regarding contact with hostile species. You have brought potentially dangerous creatures onto this station. You have filed illegal adoption papers for beings who are classified as threats to galactic safety." Yuna looked up at him. Her face showed no fear. "What do you have to say for yourself?" the speaker demanded. Yuna took a deep breath. She could feel Hana's hand shaking in hers. She could feel Bomi's small claws digging into her shoulder. She could feel the weight of millions of eyes watching her through those cameras. "I say," she replied, her voice clear and strong, "that you are pointing guns at my children." A murmur ran through the crowd. The speaker looked confused. "Your children?" "Yes, my children. I filed the adoption papers 12 days ago under Galactic Family Law, Section 7. Paragraph 3. This law states that any species capable of forming familial bonds can be adopted through proper legal channels. The Corvathi are capable of forming such bonds. Therefore, my adoption is legal." The speaker's 6 eyes blinked in different sequences. That law was written for species that are not classified as dangerous. The Corvathi are. The law does not make that distinction, Yuna interrupted. I had my legal team check very carefully. The law simply requires that the species be capable of familial bonds and that the adoption be in the best interest of the children. Both conditions are met. The speaker looked down at a datapad that someone handed him. He read for a long moment, his expression growing more and more frustrated. "This is technically correct," he admitted finally. "However, the safety of this station must be considered. Those cubs are 5, 6, 7, and 9 years old," Una said. "They like building blocks and picture books. They are learning to read. They are scared of the dark. The little one still needs help eating without making a mess." She paused. "They are children, and you have surrounded them with soldiers." She turned to look at the armed forces around her. "Look at them. Really look at them. Not as threats. Not as monsters. As children." Slowly, reluctantly, people began to actually see what was in front of them. Hannah, standing tall but trembling. Taiho, trying so hard to be strong. The twins, pressed together, their eyes wide with fear. And Bomi, peeking out from behind Yuna's head, watching everything with curious, innocent eyes. They did not look like monsters. They looked like scared kids. One of the soldiers, a woman with short brown hair, lowered her weapon slightly. Then another soldier did the same. And another. "Speaker," Una continued, "I understand your fear. The Kolvathi have done terrible things in the past. But these children did not do those things. They were not even born when those things happened. They have hurt no one. They are not responsible for the crimes of their ancestors." She pulled Bomi around and held her in her arms so everyone could see the smallest cub. Bomi looked at the crowd with her big eyes and made a small, curious sound. "This is my daughter," Una said. "Her name is Bomi. She is 5 years old. She likes to chase the cleaning robots. She falls asleep in my lap every night while I read her stories. And if anyone in this room tries to take her from me or any of my children," her voice became hard, "I will fight you. I will fight all of you. I will fight until I cannot fight anymore." The silence was absolute. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, someone started clapping. It was a Valarn, a species that looked like tall birds. She was clapping her wings together slowly, making a soft sound that echoed through the docking bay. Una looked and saw that it was Thesa, her second officer, who had come ahead to prepare for their arrival. Another person joined the clapping. Then another. Then more. The speaker raised his hands for silence, but the clapping continued to grow. Not everyone was joining in. Many people still looked angry or scared. But enough people were clapping that the speaker could not ignore it. "Enough," he said finally. "This matter will be reviewed by the full council. Until then, Captain Una and her dependents will remain on the station under supervision. Any threat from the cubs will result in immediate action." He turned and walked away, clearly unhappy but unable to do more. Una let out a long breath. They had survived the first test. But she knew this was not over. The council would review the case. There would be hearings and debates and arguments. There would be people who wanted to take her children away. But for now, they were together. For now, they were safe. She looked down at Hannah, who was still holding her hand. "You did well," she said softly. "I am proud of you." Hannah's scales flushed slightly, which Una had learned was a Korvathi blush. "I was scared. I know. But you were brave anyway." Una squeezed her hand. "Now, let us go find our new home. And I believe I promised someone something called ice cream." Momi's eyes went wide. "Ice cream! Ice cream!" And despite everything, despite the soldiers and the cameras and the fear, Una laughed. They would face whatever came next, together. The university auditorium was the largest on Central Station. It could hold 10,000 people, and today, every seat was filled. Students and professors and visitors from across the galaxy had come to watch the graduation ceremony of the most famous class in the station's history. But they were not here for the whole class. They were here for one person. Dr. Hannah stood backstage, adjusting the blue and gold robes that marked her as a doctor of xenocultural studies. Her scales had darkened with age, turning from pale green to a rich emerald. But the blue flower-like markings on her face were still there, still beautiful. She was tall now, taller than most humans, and her claws had grown long and sharp, but her eyes were still the same, gentle, kind, thoughtful. "You look nervous," said a voice behind her. Hannah turned to see Taiho leaning against the wall. Her brother had grown into a powerful adult Korvathi, with broad shoulders and scales like dark armor. But he was wearing a nice suit instead of armor, and he was smiling at her with the same protective warmth he had shown her since they were cubs. "I am about to speak to 10,000 people," Hannah said. "Of course I am nervous. You will be fine." Taiho walked over and put his hand on her shoulder. "You have faced much scarier things than a speech." Hannah laughed softly. He was right. 10 years ago, she had faced soldiers with weapons. She had faced a council that wanted to lock her up. She had faced a galaxy that called her a monster, and she had survived all of it. The doors at the back of the stage opened, and the twins poked their heads in. Jiwoo and Minji were still nearly identical, though Jiwoo had developed a small scar on her snout from a laboratory accident, and Minji wore her scales slightly more polished than her sister. They were both doctors now, specialists in xenobiology, working to understand how different species could live and work together. "Mom is looking for you," Jiwoo said. "She says you need to come to the front row before the ceremony starts. She also says she is very proud of you and will cry during your entire speech." Minji added with a grin. Hannah felt warmth spread through her chest. "I will be there in a moment." The twins disappeared, and Hannah took one last deep breath. Then she walked through the backstage corridors and out into the auditorium. The noise hit her first. 10,000 people, talking and laughing and waiting. She could see species from every corner of the galaxy. The Lorans with their bright feathers. Humans with their soft skin and endless variety. Tall beings and short beings, scaled and furred and smooth. All of them looking toward the stage, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Hannah made her way to the front row, where her family was waiting. Yuna was there, of course. Her mother, the woman who had found them in the darkness and brought them into the light. She was older now, with gray in her dark hair and lines around her eyes from years of smiling. But her eyes were still the same, warm, kind, full of love. Beside her sat Taiho, who had slipped out of the backstage area through another door, and the twins, who were already arguing quietly about something scientific. And in the seat at the end of the row, barely able to sit still with excitement, was Bomi. Bomi was 15 now, no longer the tiny cub who had climbed onto Yuna's shoulders all those years ago. She had grown into a young Korvathi woman with bright eyes and endless energy. She was in her second year of law school, determined to change the policies that still made life difficult for species like hers. "Hannah." Bomi jumped up and hugged her sister tightly. "I cannot believe you are graduating. With the highest honors. This is amazing." Hannah hugged her back, careful of her claws. "Thank you, little one." Bomi made a face. "I am not little anymore. You will always be my little one," Hannah said with a smile. The ceremony began soon after. There were speeches from the university president, from council members, from various important people. But everyone was waiting for the main event. Everyone was waiting for Hannah Dodd when her name was called. The auditorium fell silent. 10,000 people watched as a Korvathi, a member of a species that had once been the terror of the galaxy, walked to the podium to give the graduation speech. Hannah looked out at the crowd. She could feel her heart beating fast. For a moment, She was that scared cub again, facing down soldiers in the docking bay. Then she looked at the front row, at her mother, at her brothers and sisters, at the family that had been built not from blood, but from love. And she began to speak. "When I was young," she said, her voice clear and steady, "I was taught that I was a predator. My species, the Corvathi, were known throughout the galaxy as monsters. We were feared. We were hated. Everyone believed that we were dangerous by nature, that violence was in our blood, that we could never be anything other than threats." She paused, looking out at the faces watching her. Some were curious. Some were skeptical. Some were afraid. Then, when I was 9 years old, my parents died. I was left alone with my 4 younger siblings on a dying station in the middle of nowhere. For 6 months, I fought to keep them alive. For 6 months, I believed that no one would ever come for us. Because why would anyone help monsters? Her voice softened. And then a human woman walked into our lives. She looked at Yuna, and her mother smiled at her through tears. She found us in the darkness. We growled at her. We showed her our claws and our teeth. We tried to scare her away because that was what we had been taught to do. Hannah shook her head slowly. She did not run. She knelt down and she smiled, and she called us her little ones. A murmur went through the crowd. Many of them knew this story, but hearing it from Hannah herself was different. "My mother taught me something that day," Hannah continued. "She taught me that nature is not destiny. She taught me that what we are born as is not what we must become." The galaxy looked at me and saw a monster. She looked at me and saw a child who needed love. Hannah straightened up, her voice growing stronger. "Today, I stand before you as proof that she was right. I am a doctor. I have spent 10 years studying how different species can understand each other, how we can overcome fear and prejudice to build something better. My brother Taiho is an engineer who builds stations designed to welcome all species. My sisters Jiwoo and Minji are doctors working to bridge the gaps between different forms of life. And my youngest sister Bomi is studying law, fighting to change the policies that once threatened to tear our family apart." She spread her arms, her claws catching the light. "We were supposed to be monsters. Instead, we became scholars, builders, healers, and advocates. Not because we rejected what we were, but because someone showed us what we could be. Because someone chose to see past our scales and claws and teeth and saw the children underneath." Her voice dropped, becoming softer, more personal. "I know that many of you still fear the Corvathi. I know that the wounds of the past have not fully healed. And I understand that fear. My species did terrible things. We cause pain that cannot be erased." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "But I am not asking you to forget the past. I am asking you to look at the future. To look at me and my siblings and the other young Corvathi who are growing up in this galaxy. We are not the same as our ancestors. We do not have to repeat their mistakes." She looked at her mother one last time. "All it takes is one person. One person who chooses love over fear. One person who sees a child instead of a monster. One person who kneels down and opens their arms instead of reaching for a weapon." Yuna was crying openly now. So were the twins. Taiho's jaw was tight, his eyes shining. And Bomi was bouncing in her seat, her tail wagging with pride. "When we growled," Hannah concluded, her voice ringing through the auditorium, "she did not run. She stayed. And she loved us. That is what changed everything. That is what made us who we are today." She bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, all of you, for giving us a chance, for letting us prove that we are more than what our past says we should be." For a moment, there was silence. Then the applause began. It started slowly, just a few people clapping. Then more joined in. Then more. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was thundering with applause. People were standing. People were cheering. Some were crying. Hannah stood at the podium, looking out at this wave of acceptance, and felt something she had not felt since that day on the dying station. She felt safe. She walked back to her seat, and her family swarmed around her. Bomi jumped on her back like she had done when she was a cub. The twins grabbed her hands. Taiho put a proud hand on her shoulder. And Yuna, her mother, wrapped her arms around all of them at once. "I am so proud of you," Yuna whispered. "All of you, my brave, beautiful little ones." Hannah held her tightly and closed her eyes. 10 years ago, she had been a scared cub growling at a stranger, expecting fear, expecting rejection, expecting nothing good. Instead, she had found a mother, and that had made all the difference. Around them, the applause continued. But the 5 cubs, now grown, and their human mother, did not hear it. They were too busy holding each other, this strange family that had been built from the ruins of tragedy and the stubborn power of love. They had been expected to fail. They had been expected to prove everyone's fears right. Instead, they had become something magnificent. And somewhere in the stars, on the abandoned station where this story had begun, the spirits of 5 Kravati parents looked down and smiled. Their children were home. Their children were loved. Their children were going to be just fine.